Welcome to Four Best Academy. Today we're going to be looking at some percentage questions from the SSAT Middle Level, and we're going to look at a couple of ways on how to solve some problems. So like I say, all the questions we're going to be doing today are going to be taken from the Middle Level SSAT textbook. So they are questions straight from the SSAT style. Now we're going to be looking at three different ways of doing percentage questions: the breaking down method, an equivalent fractions method, and a method using a decimal multiplier. And so we're going to have a look at those three methods now. So the breaking down method is used by breaking down a percentage into usable chunks. So for example, if we're asked to find 35% of, say, 240, what we do is we say, well, that 240 is equal to 100%. And if we're trying to find 35%, what we can think of that 35 is as 5% and 3 lots of 10%. And if I've got 240 is 100%, if I divide both of those by 10, they find that 24 must equal 10%. If I divide that by 2, we can get 12 is equal to 5%. So now we've got 10% is equal to 24, 5% is equal to 12. To find our 35%, we've got 3 lots of 10%, so that's 3 lots of 24, and just the 5% there. So 3 lots of 24, 3 times 20 is 60, 3 times 4 is 12, so that would be 72, plus the 5%, which was 12, so 72 plus 12 is equal to 84. So the answer to our question, 35% of 240 is 84. And we've done that by breaking down 35% into chunks. So we looked here at 3 lots of 10%, 1 lot of 5%. And then by using 240 as 100%, we can break that down into 10% and 5%. Now, if our percentage wasn't as nice as 35%, what we could do is we could look at 10%, and rather than divide by 2 to get 5%, we could actually divide by 10 again to get 1%. So you can use this to find any percentage. Obviously, we prefer to use it with questions where your percentages are nice multiples of 5 or nice even numbers that break down easily. So that's the breaking down method. The equivalent fractions method is by thinking of this question as a fractions question. So again, we'll think 35% of 240. So we can think of 35% as a fraction. We know percentages are out of 100, so that 35% is going to be 35 over 100. And we're trying to find some amount out of 240. Okay, so again, we're going to try and make a way to get these two fractions to be equivalent. So I've got 100%, I've got 100 here. So 35 over 100. We want to try and make it into 240. Well, we can simplify that fraction. If I divide by 5, we'll get 7 over 20. I'm trying to get to 240. So to get from 20 to 240, we can times by 12. If I times the denominator of my fraction by 12, I must also times the numerator by 12. So 7 times 12 is 84. So again, we've got that answer of 84. So that's the equivalent fractions method, considering your percentage as a fraction out of 100, and that must be equal to the amount we're finding out of 240. It's a nice method, particularly if we get some difficult questions using some algebra. This is always quite a nice method to use because it's quite easy to visualize. And finally, you've got the Decimal Multiplier Method. And again, we're going to do the same question, 35% of 240. Now, this final method is going to be purely number-based. And what we do is this 35%, we're going to write that as a decimal. So 35% as a decimal is going to be 0.35. And the way we'd work out 35% of 240 is we start with the original amount, 240, and we'd multiply this by our decimal. And that will find me 35% of 240. So 240 multiplied by 0.35. We'll probably want to use a long multiplication method for this. So 5 times 0 is obviously 0. 5 times 4 is going to be 20. Carry the 2. 5 times 2 is going to be 10. So that gives me 12. Starting here now, 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 4 is 12. Carry the 1. 3 times 3 is 6, plus the 1 is 7. 12 add 72 is going to equal 84. So again, we've got that 84 answer for 35% of 240. So those are our 3 methods we can use: the breaking down method, an equivalent fractions method, and a decimal multiplier method. So let's apply this now to some questions from the SSAT. So we've got, what is 18% of 25? We can use any of our methods here. I'm going to use the equivalent fractions method, I think, for this one. And part of this will be learning which method suits you, which method is appropriate for each question. I'll start off using the equivalent fractions method, but we'll look at the other methods as well. So 18% of, so 18 out of 100 is equal to something out of 25. Now, the reason I've used the equivalent fractions method here is because I've noticed I've got 100 and I've got 25, which means there's a link there dividing by 4. So I can do the same on the top, 18 divided by 4. I can use a quick method here to do it. To give an answer of 4.5, which would be B. So that's the equivalent fractions method. We'll look possibly at the breaking down method as well as a possibility, as a way of doing this one. So the breaking down method, you've got 18%, so I would break that down into 10%, 5%, and 3 lots of 1%. So let's start off with 25 is 100%. 10% will be 2.5. I've divided both sides there by 10. We can get 5% by dividing by 2, which will give me 1.25. It's 5%. And then 1%, in fact, 1%, I'll find 1% from 10%. What we'll do is we'll go from 10% and we'll divide by 10 to find 1%, because dividing by 10 is probably easier than dividing by 5, which will give me 0.25 as 1%. Now, as I said, we can break this 18% down into 10%, 5%, and 3 lots of 1%. So obviously 10% we said was 2.5, 5% is 1.25, and 3 lots of 1%. 3 times 0.25 is 0.75, plus 1.125 is going to give me 2, plus 2.5 is going to give me 4.5. So that's another method, still getting that answer of 4.5. I'm going to leave the decimal multiplier method, but again, we'd work it out using the same way. Okay, now this is a different style of question, again from the SSAT. 8 is 40% of what number? So in this instance, we've been given the answer essentially. We know what 40% is, we don't know what the start value is. Again, we can use any of our methods here, so I think we'll do all 3 methods for this. We'll start off with the decimal multiplier method. So we said the decimal multiplier method, we're converting that percentage into a decimal. So 40% will become 0.4. And we know when we work this out, in the example, we did the original amount multiplied by our decimal multiplier to give us essentially our answer. 8% is 40% of our original number. So if I've got our original number times 0.4 is equal to 8, to find that original number, I can just divide 8 by 0.4, which gives me 20. So our original number would be B, 20. So that's one method of doing it, using our decimal multiplier method. We're also going to have a look at our breaking down method here, which I think is going to be a very useful method for this one. So we're told that 8 is 40%, so we're starting off at 40% is equal to 8. And remember, if we're trying to find our original amount, we're trying to get to 100%. So if I know that 40% is 8, if I divide by 4, I can get 10%. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And here, if I've got 10% and I want to get to 100%, I can just times by 10 to give me 20. So again, same answer using a different method. I think this one's a much nicer method for this question. And it's because we've got a really nice round numbered percentage there. 40%, really easy to break down to 10% and get back to 100%. And we'll have a look at our equivalent fractions method, just so we've covered all of our methods on this question. So 8 is 40% of what number? So again, we know 40% as a fraction is 40 out of 100. And this time, we know that our numerator is going to be 8. We don't know what our denominator is. We don't know what that original number is. So again, we're looking at equivalent fractions, and we can see that to get from 8 to 40, we've times by 5. So what times 5 gives me 100? Well, that must be 20. 20 times 5 gives me 100. So that must be our missing number in our equivalent fraction. So 3 methods there for a different style of question here, where we're trying to find the original number using all 3 methods, all giving the exact same answer. Okay, we've got one more type of percentage question to look at before we look at the more tricky multi-step question. And this is where we don't know the percentage. We've been told 120 is what percent of 80? Now, I need to read this question quite carefully, because normally we expect the original number to be the larger number, and our answer, the percentage we worked out, to be the smaller number. But if we read this question carefully, we've got 120 is what percent of 80? So this 80 here is actually our original number. Okay, we'll do this using all three methods again. We'll start off with our decimal multiplier method. So we know that 80 is our original number multiplied by whatever our decimal multiplier was is equal to our final answer. And again, we can work out that decimal multiplier by doing 120 divided by 80. If we work that out, we can cancel out our zeros to get 12 divided by 8. 8 into 12 goes once. Remainder 4. Put a decimal point in. 8 into 40 goes 5 times. So our answer is going to be 1.5. Remember, that's our decimal multiplier. So we then need to change that 1.5 back into a percentage as 150%. So the answer isn't 1.5%. Remember, that 1.5 is our decimal multiplier. We then need to change it back into a percentage to give me the answer D. Let's have a look at another method then. So let's have a look at our equivalent fraction method. So I'll just get rid of this working out. So our equivalent fraction method, we don't know the percentage. So if we consider our percentage fraction, it's something out of 100. We're talking about a percentage, so it's out of 100. We don't know what our numerator is. However, in our equivalent fraction, we know that our original amount was 80, and we know that our end amount was 120. So we're trying to make these two fractions equivalent. 80 over 120, I can simplify that down if I divide by 4 to give me 30 over 20. And then if I compare 20 to 100, we know that's multiplied by 5. Same with 30, multiplied by 5 to give me a value of x of 150. So 150 is again our answer. Same answer as we got using the decimal method, just using a slightly different method. I think both those methods are good ones for this question. I probably prefer the fractional method, but that's just out of preference. Now we'll look at the breaking down method. For me, I don't think when we're trying to work out a percentage, when we're trying to work out the actual percentage difference rather than the original and end amount, I don't think the breaking down method is the most useful, but we can still look at a way to do it. So we know our original amount is 80, so that 80 is equal to 100%. And we're trying to find out what 120 is. Now, these are quite nice numbers here, so it's not going to be too bad, but I'm trying to get from 80 to 120. Well, if we divide by, let's divide by 2 to get to 40, and that's going to be 50% over here. We know that 40 is going to equal 50%. And if I want to get from 40 to 120, I can multiply by 3. Multiply 50 by 3 gives us 150%. Now, in this question, it's worked out quite nicely because 80 to 120, we've got lots of common factors there that we can work out. If they are more difficult numbers, I would definitely suggest using either the decimal method or using our percentage method. Okay, let's look at one final question here. And we've got a Wordy question with a couple of steps. So Bradley Middle School held a dance for the 7th and 8th grade students. 60% of the students in attendance were 7th graders, 40% were 8th graders. If 90 7th graders attended, how many students attended the dance in total? Okay, so we know that we've only got 7th graders and 8th graders here, because obviously we've got 60% being in the 7th grade and 40% being in the 8th grade. 60 add 40 is 100. So that's all of our numbers. That's everyone accounted for, 100%. So we're going to start this one, I think, using the breaking down method, because we know that we've got 97th graders, so that 60% is equal to 90 students. If we're trying to find the total number of students, we're trying to get to 100%. So if I've got 60%, I can divide by 6 to find 10%. 90 divided by 6 is going to equal 15. Then to get from 10% to 100%, we can multiply by 10. 15 multiplied by 10 is going to equal 150. So we've got the answer of B. So that's using our breaking down method. We can again use our other methods we've discussed as well. So we can use our fractional method. So we've been told that 60% of the students, 60% are 7th graders, and we've got 97th graders. So we know that 60%, so 60 out of 100 as a fraction, is equal to 90 students out of our total amount. 60 over 100, if we think of equivalent fractions, we can write that as 30 over 50 by simplifying, divided by 2. Then to get from 30 to 90, we can multiply by 3. 50 multiplied by 3, 150. So that's our method using our fractions. And we'll look at one final method using our decimals. So our decimal method here, we've got 60% being 90 students. So again, we're trying to find that 100%. We're trying to find the original amount. 60% as our decimal multiplier is going to be 0.6. And we know that is going to equal 90. So to find that original amount, we're going to do 90 divided by 0.6. If I want to divide by 0.6, what I will do is I will change that to 900, and I will change that to 6. So 6 into 900 goes once into 9. Leave me 3 left over. 5 times into 30. And then 0. 150, which is going to be obviously answer B, 150. With these sorts of questions, I think the key is being able to read it and identify. So actually with all these questions, to be able to read the questions and identify what information have we been given. So in this first question here, 18% of 25, we've been given the original amount and we've been given the percentage we're trying to work out. In this question here, 8% is 40, so 8 is 40% of what number? We've been given our end value and we've been given the percentage. We're trying to work out our original number. And with this question here, we've been given the original number, we've been given our end amount, and we are trying to work out the percentage. So part of the key, I think, for using these methods is being able to read the question and identify what are we trying to work out. Are we trying to work out the original amounts? Are we trying to work out the new amounts? Or are we trying to work out the percentage? Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more videos on maths, and we'll hope to see you sometime in the future.